Greetings and salutations. This is the Adjutant. I want you to picture a scene that plays out every single week across America. A service member has just walked out of the retirement briefing. They're carrying a folder of forms. Their phone is buzzing with messages. Their spouses has questions. Their coworkers have opinions. Someone stops them in the hallway and says, "Don't wait. You need to get this done right away." Another person says, "If I were you, I'd roll everything over immediately." Someone else says, "I retired last year. Here's exactly what I'd do." Within a matter of minutes, one of the biggest financial transactions of their life starts to feel like an emergency. I've seen this happen for decades. I saw it during my Army career. I've seen it as an attorney helping people make life-changing decisions. I've seen it for more than 20 years working with veterans as a VA adjudicator. The details change, the uniform change, the personalities change, but the pressure is always the same. People begin making permanent decisions because they feel temporary pressure. Now, here's something I want you to remember throughout this entire video. Pressure is not proof that a decision must be made today. Most retirement mistakes don't happen because people lack intelligence. They happen because intelligent people confuse urgency with importance. Retirement is different from almost every other mission you've ever had. In the military, speed often saves lives. You learn to act quickly. You learn to execute with confidence. You learn that hesitation can have consequences. Those lessons served you well in uniform, but retirement rewards a completely different skill. Retirement rewards patience. The discipline that got you promoted is not always the same discipline that protects your wealth. Sometimes the most disciplined thing you can do is to refuse to decide until you gathered enough information. That's what today's conversation is really about. I'm going to walk through 7 retirement decisions that you should never make under pressure. They aren't theoretical. They're decisions that affect pensions, investment, healthcare, taxes, family relationships, and ultimately peace of mind. By the end of this video, I want you to have a completely different mindset. I don't want you thinking like someone who's trying to finish retirement. I want you thinking like someone who's trying to build the next 30 years of their life. Those are 2 very different goals. Now, let's begin with the first decision. December number 1 is retiring before you understand what retirement actually costs. One of the biggest surprises for new retirees isn't that they stopped working, it's that their experience didn't stop with them. Many people spend years calculating how much income they receive. Very few spend enough time calculating how much life will actually cost. Retirement isn't simply replacing paycheck, it's replacing an entire financial system. Now, while you're working, there are countless things happening automatically. Taxes come out, insurance premiums are deducted, retirement contributions happen behind the scenes. Life has a rhythm that feels predictable. Then retirement arrives. Suddenly you're responsible for coordinating income from multiple sources. Military retired pay, VA compensation, FERS if you're a federal employee, Social Security, TSP withdrawals, personal investment, and maybe part-time employment, maybe even rental income. Each source has different rules, different tax implications, different timing, different risk. What looks simple on paper suddenly becomes much more complicated in real life. Then inflation enters the conversation. Many people underestimate just how expensive 30 years of retirement can be. $1 today won't have the same purchasing power 20 years from now. Healthcare costs continue to rise, property taxes may increase, insurance premiums may change, vehicles eventually need replacing, home requires maintenance, family emergencies happen, life doesn't stop simply because you're retired. One mistake I see repeatedly is people building a retirement budget based on today's expenses instead of tomorrow's reality. They assume that because they have enough income today, they will always have enough. Well, that's a dangerous assumption. Another mistake is confusing being debt-free with being financially secure. Those are wonderful goals, but they are not identical. Financial security comes from having flexibility. It comes from having reserves. It comes from knowing that an unexpected expense won't force you into making another bad decision. You need to ask yourself this question. If inflation averaged just 3% over the next 20 years, would my current retirement plan still work? If healthcare costs doubled, would I change? If my roof failed, could I replace it without panicking? If one investment declined sharply, would I still sleep well at night? Those questions aren't meant to create fear, they're meant to create confidence, because once you've answered them honestly, pressure begins to disappear. You stop reacting emotionally, you begin making decisions strategically. Now, I've learned something over the years. Financial confidence doesn't come from having perfect numbers. It comes from understanding your numbers. Now, there's a difference. You don't need certainty, you need clarity. The clarity creates peace, and peace produces decision. All right? Now, let's move to decision number 2. Never claim Social Security simply because everyone around you tells you it's time. If there's one retirement topic surrounded by opinions, it's Social Security. You'll hear someone say, take it as early as possible because you may not live that long. Someone else insists, wait until 70 no matter what. Another person says the system is going broke, so get yours while you can. The problem is that none of those statements automatically applies to you. Social Security is deeply personal. Your health matters. Your family history matters. Your other retired income matters. Whether you're married matters. Whether you're still working matters. Whether longevity runs in your family matters. There isn't a universal answer. There is only your answer. Now, for some people, claiming at 62 makes sense. For others, waiting provides dramatically greater income over the lifetime. Neither choice is automatically wise or foolish. The mistake is allowing fear, rumors, or pressure to make the decision for you. I've noticed something very interesting. People often spend weeks researching a new vehicle, months comparing homes, hours reading online reviews before buying a television. Then they make Social Security decision that could affect hundreds of thousands of dollars over their lifetime after listening to a conversation at a family barbecue. Think about that. One casual opinion can outweigh years of financial planning if you're not careful. Slow down. Run the numbers. Understand your options. Know how the decision affects your spouse if you're married. Know how it interacts with your pension. Know how taxes may change. Know how working during retirement could influence your benefits. Knowledge reduces pressure. Pressure thrives where knowledge is missing. Now, let's talk about decision number 3. Never sell your home simply because retirement makes you feel like you should. Retirement has a way of making people want a fresh start. Sometimes that's exactly the right decision. Sometimes it becomes one of their biggest regrets. I've watched people sell beautiful homes because they believe they had to simplify immediately. Then 6 months later, they realize they missed the neighborhood, they missed the friendship, they missed their routine, they missed the life they had spent years building. I've also seen people buy their dream retirement home after spending one wonderful vacation in a particular location. Everything felt perfect, the weather was beautiful, the restaurants were excellent, the beaches were peaceful, the golf courses were amazing. Then real life arrived. Tourists went home, medical care wasn't as convenient, traffic felt different, the community wasn't quite what they imagined. Vacation and daily living are not the same experience. Now, one of the smartest pieces of retirement advice I've ever heard was this. Never buy a permanent home based on temporary emotions. If you're considering relocating, spend time there. Not 3 days, not a long weekend. Live there. Rent if possible. Go grocery shopping. Drive during rush hour. Visit doctors. Attend community events. See what a normal Tuesday feels like. Retirement isn't built on vacations, it's built on ordinary days. And ordinary days determine whether a place truly feels like home. Now, I discovered that many retirement mistakes happen because people believe every decision has to happen immediately after retirement ceremony. Well, it doesn't. Your retirement date is not a deadline for every other life decision. You don't have to move that month. You don't have to buy a new home that season. You don't have to reinvent your life by next Friday. Now, one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself during retirement is permission to slow down the timeline. Because when you remove artificial deadline, wisdom finally has room to speak. And that's exactly where we're headed next. Because the next decision involves something that almost every retiree has been approached about, and making the wrong move could quietly cost you tens of thousands of dollars over the course of your retirement. And what is that? That is decision number 4, which is one of the most misunderstood decisions in retirement. Never move your retirement investments simply because someone tells you that you should. If you spent any time around retirement seminars, financial workshops, or even social media, you've probably heard someone say, once you retire, you need to get your money out of the TSP. Sometimes they'll say it with absolute confidence. Sometimes they'll even make it sound like leaving your money there is a mistake. Here's what I've learned over the years. Confidence and correctness are not the same thing. The Thrift Savings Plan has helped millions of federal employees and military members build substantial retirement savings. It offers extremely low expenses. It offers simplicity. It offers institutional pricing that many investors can't duplicate elsewhere. Now, does that mean everyone should leave every dollar in the TSP forever? Absolutely not. There are situations where a rollover makes sense. Maybe you want investment choices that the TSP doesn't offer. Maybe you're considering consolidating accounts. Maybe your estate planning strategy points in a different direction. Maybe there's a legitimate reason. The point is this: your decision should be driven by your plan, not someone else's sales presentation. Retirement is unfortunately a season when many people become targets. You're leaving a career, you're having accumulated assets, you're making major financial decisions. That combination attracts attention. Some people genuinely want to help you. Others are far more interested in your retirement account than your retirement. Whenever someone recommends moving your money, ask one simple question: how does this recommendation benefit me? Then ask a second question: how does it benefit you? Those two questions can save you an enormous amount of money. Never feel embarrassed about asking difficult questions. You're not questioning someone's integrity. You're protecting decades of disciplined savings. Remember how long it took to build your retirement account? Years of deployment, years of long hours, years of promotion, years of automatic contribution, years of saying no to things you wanted because you were investing in your future. Don't let 30 minutes of pressure undo 30 years of discipline. I've noticed that people often confuse activity with progress. They believe they need to make changes because retirement feels like a major life event. Sometimes the wisest investment decision is making no immediate investment decisions at all. Give yourself time. Review your options, seek multiple opinions, understand every fee, understand every risk, understand every benefit, then decide. Not because someone else is uncomfortable waiting, but because you're confident you've made the right decision. Now, let's move to the decision number 5. Never rush your healthcare decisions. If there's one area where confusion creates unnecessary stress, it's healthcare. Military retirees often have TRICARE. Many veterans qualify for VA healthcare. Federal employees may have Federal Employment Health Benefits, or FEHB. Eventually, Medicare enters the conversation. Some people continue working and receive employer-sponsored coverage. These systems can actually overlap. Sometimes they complement each other beautifully. Sometimes they create confusion. The mistake is assuming you understand them simply because you heard people talking about them. I've watched retirees cancel coverage they later wish they kept. I watch others pay for coverage they didn't actually need. I've seen people discover gaps in their healthcare planning only after serious medical issues occurred. That's not when you want to learn how your healthcare works. Healthcare decisions deserve calm thinking. Read the rules. Understand enrollment periods. Know what happens if you relocate. Know which providers participate. know how your prescriptions are covered, know what happens if your healthcare changes 10 years from now. One lesson I've learned is that good retirement planning isn't about preparing for your healthiest years, it's about preparing for the years you hope never come. That's not pessimism, that's stewardship. It's the same reason we buy insurance for our homes before the storm arrives. You don't prepare after the emergency, you prepare before it. And preparation requires patience. Pressure says, just pick something. Wisdom says, you might want to understand that first. Which brings us to decision number 6. Never sacrifice your retirement because you love your family. Now let me explain exactly what I mean. One of the most beautiful qualities I see in military families is their willingness to serve other people. You spent your entire career taking care of others, taking care of soldiers, taking care of sailors, taking care of airmen, taking care of Marines, taking care of guardians, taking care of your family, putting the mission first, putting everyone else's needs ahead of your own. That mindset creates incredible leaders, but it can also create vulnerable retirees. I've watched parents empty their retirement accounts to rescue adult children who never learned financial responsibility. I've seen grandparents co-sign loans they couldn't afford. I've watched retirees drain emergency funds to solve problems that weren't actually emergencies. Helping your family, folks, is honorable. Destroying your own financial future is not. One of the hardest words to say is no, especially when the people asking are the people you love most. But here's something I've learned. Sometimes saying no today is the greatest gift you can give tomorrow. Because if you protect your retirement, you reduce the likelihood that your children will someday have to support you financially. Financial independence is one of the greatest inheritance you can leave your family, not because of the money they'll receive, but because of the burden they won't carry. Now, there's another reason this decision becomes emotional. Retirement often creates guilt. People finally have time. They finally have access to retirement savings. Family members know they're retired. Requests begin to increase. Can you help me with the down payment? Can you loan us some money? Can you help pay for this? Every request feels reasonable by itself, but retirement isn't destroyed by one giant decision. It is often weakened by hundreds of small emotional decisions made without a long-term plan. Now, before you give away significant money, ask yourself 3 questions. Can I truly afford this? Will this decision affect my own long-term security? Am I solving a temporary problem or creating a permanent one? Those questions don't eliminate generosity, they protect wisdom. Generosity without wisdom eventually becomes unsustainable. While generosity can continue for decades, as we walk through these first 6 decisions, I hope you notice something. None of these mistakes begin with bad intentions. People aren't trying to ruin their retirement. They're trying to do what feels right in the moment. They're trying to reduce uncertainty. They're trying to help family. They're trying to simply live. They're trying to simplify life. They're trying to move forward. The problem is that pressure narrows our vision. It causes us to focus on immediate relief instead of lifelong consequences. And that's why the 7th decision may be the most important one of them all, because it almost has nothing to do with money. Yet it quietly influences every financial decision you make after retirement. Decision number 7 may be the most important retirement decision you'll ever make. Never retire from something before you've decided what you're retiring toward. I've saved this one for last because in many ways it sits underneath every other decision we've discussed today. When people think about retirement, they usually think about what they're leaving. They're leaving the uniform. They're leaving the office. They're leaving the schedule. They're leaving the meetings. They're leaving the deployments. They're leaving the stress. They're leaving the commute. They're leaving the deadlines. But very few people spend enough time thinking about what they're moving toward. For decades, your life has had structure. Someone expected you to be somewhere. Someone depended on you. Someone needed your experience. Someone counted on your leadership. Your calendar had purpose. Your mornings had direction. Your evenings had rhythm. Then one day, it all changes. At first, it feels wonderful. You sleep in, you enjoy a slower pace, you catch up on projects around the house, you take a trip, you celebrate. But eventually, the excitement wears off, and many retirees discover something they've never expected. They didn't just retire from a career, they retired from an identity. I have known people who are financially prepared for retirement, but emotionally unprepared. Their pension was solid, their investments were growing, but they woke up wondering, who are they now? For so many years, the answer to the question, what do you do, came naturally. I'm in the Army. I work for the Veterans Administration. I'm a federal employee. I'm a police officer. I'm a firefighter. I'm an executive. Those titles become part of how we see ourselves. When the title changes, it can feel like part of us has disappeared. That's why I encourage every future retiree to ask a different question. Instead of asking, what am I retiring from? Ask, what kind of life am I trying to build? Maybe you want to mentor young people. Maybe you want to volunteer. Maybe you want to teach. Maybe you want to travel. Maybe you want to start a small business. Maybe you want to write a book you've been talking about for years. Maybe you simply want to become the grandparent who's always been present. None of those things happen automatically. Purpose must be built just like wealth, one decision at a time, one habit at a time, one meaningful day at a time. I've learned something about purpose. It rarely arrives because we're waiting for it. It usually appears because we're moving towards something worthwhile. Retirement isn't the finish line. It's the transfer of responsibility. Now, for the first time in decades, you become the commanding officer of your own calendar. No one else writes your missions. No one else sets your priorities. No one determines how you will spend your most valuable resource, time. That freedom is beautiful, but freedom without purpose often becomes drift, and drift eventually affects every part of retirement. People who lose purpose often spend differently, they eat differently, they exercise differently, they think differently, they relate to other people differently. Purpose doesn't just shape your days, it protects your decisions. Now let's go back to where we started. Remember that service member walking out of the retirement briefing, folder in hand, phone buzzing, friends offering advice, co-workers sharing opinions, everyone telling them what they should do next? Now imagine that same person walking through those doors again. Same building, same folder, same conversations, same well-meaning advice, but this time something is different. This time, they aren't in a hurry. They thank everyone for their suggestions. They take their paperwork home. They sit down with their spouse. They pray. They review the numbers. They ask thoughtful questions. They seek wise counsel. They sleep on every major decision because they understand something they didn't understand before. Retirement is not a race. It's a transition. And transitions deserve wisdom more than speed. The truth is, very few retirement decisions have to be made today. Salespeople may create deadlines, friends may create pressure, your own emotions create urgency. But urgency is not always reality. One of the greatest financial skills you'll ever develop is learning the difference between a real deadline and an emotional deadline. That single habit can save you from mistakes that take you years to undo. If there's one lesson I hope you remember long after this video ends, it's this. Never allow someone else's urgency to become your permanent decision. Slow down, gather information, ask questions, seek counsel, think long-term. The military taught us to prepare before the mission. Your retirement deserves the same level of preparation because this isn't just about money. It's about freedom. It's about peace. It's about protecting the life you spent decades earning. You didn't serve your country for all those years just to spend retirement reacting to pressure. You earned the right to make thoughtful decisions. Exercise that. One careful decision at a time. If today's conversation helped you see retirement differently, I hope you'll share it with another service member, veteran, or federal employee who's approaching this next chapter. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give someone isn't another answer, it's permission to slow down long enough to ask better questions. If you're new here, welcome. This channel is dedicated to helping military members, veterans, and federal employees build wealth, understand their benefits, and create a retirement that's built on wisdom instead of guesswork. If that sounds like something you'd like to benefit from, I'd be honored to have you join our community. And so there you have it. I wish you all blessings and blessings. Shalom.